Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Hey, check out our brand new sponsor, Dynamic Solutions 2. That's the number 2. They offer a life-changing, dynamic financial solution. The finest in fast, professional, affordable credit repair. Is your credit in bad shape? Do you need a new car? Ready to buy a new house? You want to rent an apartment? Are you going to apply for a job? Any one of these activities, they're going to ask for a credit report and then check out your credit score. Let Dynamic Solutions 2 erase your negative credit remarks. They have affordable monthly prices. They accept Visa, MasterCard, PayPal options available. You go to www.dynamicsolutions, that's the number 2.com, or call 424-888-2820. 424-888-2820. Now, if you enter promo code ED or you mention Ed Opperman, you get a 10% discount. How's that? You get a free consultation, all negative items removed, get back in positive credit position. Dynamic Solutions 2, life-changing dynamic financial solutions. 424-888-2820. Tell them Ed Opperman sent you. You get a 10% discount.
Hey, you, podcast listener. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, proud investigator, Ed Opperman, and every Saturday night, you can find me here on American Freedom Radio. Show's brought to you by emailrevealer.com. Go to emailrevealer.com, and let's say you want to locate somebody, you know, summer's coming, old romance or something like that. You can go there and we can do a locate for you, people search. You can do a background check on somebody, asset search. That's why you would go to emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget OppermanReport.com. We have a special members section, exclusive content that you won't find here on Friday nights or Saturday nights for free. It's exclusive content. You become a member and sign up. And we have extra shows you can find there on the OppermanReport.com. Also, too, we have just started a document section. By the way, there's a bookstore there, too, as well. But we've just started a document section where we add all kinds of nifty stuff. We have all kinds of stuff about the Trump lawsuits and Jeffrey Epstein. We just had last night Montgomery Blair Sibley, who's the attorney for the D.C. Madam, and we have you can go on there and find his exhibit that has all the Verizon telephone records of Jean Palfrey, the D.C. Madam. Today we have a very special guest. I'm really, really excited about this. Danny, have we been able to connect with our guest?
Yes.
Okay, great. We have Richard Stratton. This guy's the author of Smuggler's Blues, a true story of the hippie mafia. But also, too, I've been looking up his stuff. He also was one of the screenwriters of the movie White Boys, which is one of my favorite movies. And by coincidence, I just happened to be watching that movie earlier this week. I didn't even know that our guest was connected to that movie. Mr. Stratton, are you there?
I am indeed. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you pretty good.
Okay, great.
So, Mr. Stratton, tell us about yourself. Who is Richard Stratton?
Who is Richard Stratton? I ask myself that question every day.
Okay.
Just a guy trying to figure out what this fantastic experience we call life is really all about, and hoping that my time here on Earth will be useful and meaningful to other people after I have moved on.
Okay, very good.
That's who I am.
Let me ask you a question. How old are you?
I'm 70 years old.
70 years old. God bless you, man. Okay.
Yeah.
And you've had some life. You were the editor of High Times magazine. You were a marijuana, hashish smuggler, now a movie producer, all this kind of stuff. Looking back, you must be pretty impressed with yourself, right?
No, I wouldn't say so. In fact, I probably am harder on myself than I should be, but that's just part of my Yankee wasp upbringing, where you never really are satisfied or congratulate yourself. You more or less continually trying to improve your physical state, your mental state, your economic state. You know, it's a drive that I have. So that I never really feel like, wow, I've really done this or done that. It's just like, okay, what's next?
Okay. Now, you grew up on the East Coast in New York?
I grew up in Boston, actually, in a suburb of Boston, Wellesley, Massachusetts, where the famous women's college is.
Oh, that must have been fun. Okay. So now, give us an idea. Smuggler's Blues, a true story of the hippie mafia. What's it about?
What's it about? It's about that era in the not so distant past when the United States was consuming upwards of 10 to 15, 20 tons of marijuana a day, and virtually none of it was being grown in this country, when all of it was being imported from Mexico and Colombia and Thailand, and hashish was coming in from Afghanistan and Lebanon and India and Pakistan. And guys like myself, people who were what we loosely referred to as the so-called hippie mafia, guys who were like guys and women, I shouldn't say just guys, because there were quite a few women involved, who were the ones who were going to these countries and importing this cannabis product back into the United States and distributing it to the massive market that was then emerging in the United States. And in the interim, the homegrown network, the homegrown product has virtually taken over the marketplace, so that most of the marijuana that's consumed in America now is grown right here in America. But there was this period of time, the 60s, 70s, 80s, up until probably the late 80s, early 90s, when America really depended on these sort of hippie entrepreneurs who were willing to risk body and their freedom to keep America high. And that's basically what it's about. It was an adventurous time, a time of excitement and living outside the law. I think we realized then and knew then that this day would come eventually when the laws would change. We realized, I think, from an early point, in the early 60s and certainly in 1974 when High Times was founded, we knew that ultimately this day would come when America would realize that this plant was not as dangerous and harmful as it has been made out to be, and ultimately be legal in this country. So I think we're on that, almost at that point now.
So back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you were one of the guys that was bringing in that commercial Colombian pot that was going for about $300, $350 a pound on the Northeast coast.
Yeah, that was one of the things I did.
Okay.
What my main area of expertise was Lebanese hashish. And that just happened by happenstance. I ended up in Beirut, started smuggling first suitcases with false bottoms full of hash back, and then ultimately we moved into what is known as the commercial smuggle, where you find a product that is in demand in the United States, a legal product that's in demand in the United States. You find a company that's in the process of importing that product. You make a deal and you hide your product in with the legal goods and hope that customs doesn't find it. And that's usually the way the big loads come in. And we were doing, sailboats, and we were doing freighters, and we were doing virtually, and people would come to me and say, I know somebody who has an airplane, or I know somebody who has a patch at the airport, a patch meaning a connection with the customs people or with the people who were working in the air freight terminal and could pull your product out before it went through customs. So we were always looking for ways to get cannabis products into the United States without getting busted.
Okay. Now, when you first made your connection in Afghanistan or Lebanon, right? How old were you when you first made that connection over there?
I was probably 31, 32 at that point.
About 31 years old.
Early 30s, yeah. Because I went to prison when I was, how old was I? 37. Yeah, I was 37 when I got locked up and got out when I was 45. So, yeah, it must have been probably my very first trip was late 20s, early 30s. But when I made the big connection, I connected with the guy who was the chief of customs in Lebanon, and that was my man. The big problem there was getting it out of the country. If you could get it safely out of the country, then of course there's always the issue of trying to get it in the country. But a lot of stuff, if you didn't have the right connection, not only in Lebanon, but in Mexico and Colombia and wherever these parts, you had to be paying the police. You had to be paying law enforcement because it's all controlled by the cops in these countries. And once you had the right people and you could pay the right people and you knew you were going to get your product out, it was a lot easier to get it in.
Now, before you made your way to Lebanon, though, how did you get started? Like in high school, selling nickel bags and joints and stuff like that? How did you get started?
Well, I went to school in Arizona.
Okay.
From Wellesley to Arizona State University. I was a wrestler. I was on the wrestling team at Arizona State. And I had a roommate who was older, who was a graduate student who smoked pot and who had a truck. And we used to take these trips to different places around the state of Arizona. And then we started taking these longer trips down to Baja California, down into Mexico, camping and just going around and checking it out. And at one point, we were on our way back, and we stopped at this border town, Nogales, and my friend went off to check out the girls in this establishment that we were in. And I asked the bartender if there was any pot available. And he brought his 9 or 10-year-old son over and said, in Spanish, take this guy and introduce him to Pepe and get him some mota, some marijuana. So he took me around the corner to a place where they fixed these flat tires. And there was a guy there who was like a rumpled version of Humphrey Bogart. He was a Mexican dude who he said, well, I don't sell joints. I only sell kilos. And he was selling kilos for $100 a kilo. I had $300 on me. I bought 3 kilos. I hid it behind the door panel of this international pickup truck that my roommate was driving. When he came down, he was too wasted to drive. He was half drunk and was basically falling asleep. So I ended up driving the truck back across the border, knowing that there was 3 kilos hidden in the door. And that rush that I got, that adrenaline rush that I got, became my drug of choice. It was that whole thing of just getting off on the energy involved in it. Like I used to tell people, it's like gambling. It's like you risk your money, you risk your life, you risk your freedom, but the reward and the adrenaline rush that you get